Good morning, everybody. Welcome on in. Got a good little show for you tonight, or this morning, I should say. I don't know why I said tonight. I had a pretty good time. I was lifting earlier, went pretty well. Definitely on the weaker side, but we got a pretty good show for you today. I'm going to grab a little bit of water and then we'll dive into it. I should have let the intro keep playing while I got the water. That's my mistake. So, all right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit. You know what? I should also turn off this. There we go. Much better. Okay. Sorry about that, y'all. So, got a consultation request. And if you would like a consultation, if you would like to ask me anything, let me know. It can be diet plans, like personalized diet plans, personalized workout regimens, just questions like this one, dating advice, personal finance advice, an audit of your own finances. Just let me know. I will happily reply. But we got a question today. So, Dear Bull, hi. I wanted to ask you about the shooting of the most recent healthcare CEO by Luigi Mangione. I wanted to ask you two major questions about this. The first is, do you think the shooting was justified? And the second was, do you think this will produce any change? Thank you very much. I'd like to stay anonymous. Okay, so first things first. Do I condone the shooter? No, it was a senseless murder. Right, you can argue that the healthcare CEO, apparently there was rumors if he was insider trading or accusations. We don't know if it was actually happening. I'm not following it that closely, but based on doing the research after getting this consultation, it looks like it's just accusations. He hasn't been proven guilty on that. And now that he's dead, I'm not sure what the point in trying him for it would be, because even if he's convicted, that does not, if hypothetically he were to be convicted, that would not justify a senseless murder. So is the shooting justified? No. Is it explainable? Yes. By all accounts, it seemed like Mr. Mangione, the shooter, was a relatively normal guy. He lived out here, just down the road in Kaka'ako. Like, I've biked by the place he used to live. People said he was a nice guy. Obviously, he left here before I moved here, but kept himself in great shape. So it's not like one of these things where I think his healthcare issues were not self-inflicted. So it seems like he was someone who got truly darn pissed off at the system enough to where he wanted to take action into his own hands like a vigilante. Is vigilante justice the answer? No, but while I don't condone it, I don't think anybody condones it. I can understand why he did it. I mean, it's no secret that the U.S. healthcare system is fundamentally broken. I think it doesn't really matter where you are on the political spectrum, too. People on the left think it's broken. People on the right think it's broken. Their solutions may be different, but I think everybody tends to agree that the status quo is giving us worse results for more money than any other developed country in the world, and quite a few underdeveloped ones. So from a perspective of that end, to answer your first question, no, it's not justified, and I'm not going to sit here and condone that. While saying that, I do understand why. There's a difference between understanding why someone did something and condoning why they did that. And if you're a healthcare CEO, your response to that should not be, I need to go get security guards. Your response to that should be, holy shit, we really pissed off our customers. We have a really, really low customer satisfaction rating, and that is true. The U.S. health insurance industry is very, very difficult to navigate. As for whether or not, this is the second question, to me is far more interesting. And thank you again. This person, by the way, did not pay for this consultation, plugged me on social media instead. I'm now offering that as an alternative. So If you want a consultation for free, can do that. Pretty good to go there. We are live, right? Okay. Yeah, just wanted to be sure. Okay, just haven't had anybody come in yet. For some reason, it was my control panel is acting as though I'm not live, which it seems like I am. So, anywho. As far as the changes I think it'll have on the U.S. healthcare system, do I think this will, in and of itself, make any changes happen? No. It's one act of violence. I think the only thing this will do is increase demand for security details for highly paid, or one might argue overpaid CEOs. I don't think an act of vigilante, if you want to call it justice, I wouldn't call it justice. I would call it a disproportionate response. It's still a murder, y'all. I would say an act of vigilantism like this, that's probably the right word, is not going to individually create the change I think that Mangione, or really anyone in the United States, wants to see. Weirdly, while I am not particularly pro-Trump, I do think the Trump administration does have a very unique chance to make some changes that would positively affect the system. What do I mean by that? Well, I think in general, right, the opposition to fixing healthcare has been mostly on the right-wing side. The right wing in general appears to be more attached to the status quo. However, the Trump wing of the Republican Party, which seems to have, it's not 100% dominating, controlling, but it controls the majority of it. I think there is a chance that you're going to see them point to the populist route and actually try to make some changes. Whether or not those changes actually fix the issues in the system, I don't think, there's no one silver bullet. You say, oh, let's make universal health care. That's not going to fix some of the underlying problems, okay? One of the biggest underlying problems is that even if you went full socialized medicine like the United Kingdom's NHS tomorrow, which is unrealistic and would require a massive increase in taxes to support, even if you went that route, the United States has some fundamental challenges that are going to produce higher healthcare costs than other developed nations. The biggest one is our obesity rates. This is one where I actually think the Trump administration might have some shots at success. The reason being is that Robert F. Kennedy, a man who I'm certainly glad did not win the presidency, because I think he's a nutcase on a lot of issues, predominantly nuclear power. But it is very clear. Go look at RFK Jr. You can argue whatever you want about his qualifications for the job or his mental state or whatever, but one thing he is not is out of shape. He is in very good shape. It's quite funny, actually. Apparently, this is, I was reading an article about this. Apparently, when RFK Jr. Went to sit down with Trump to suspend his campaign and endorse Trump, this is such a power, this is a power move. Respect to Trump for doing this. It's shitty, but it's a power move. Had him sit down and eat McDonald's with him, and RFK fucking hated that. I mean, RFK just go look at him. There are videos of him doing pull-ups and shit. He's in his 70s and he looks terrific. Like, he's one step below Arnold as far as guys who have taken excellent care of their bodies. I don't think he's right with regards to things like GMOs, but all this over-processed sugary crap that we put into our bodies, yeah, maybe Uncle Sam would be, since we've already partially subsidized healthcare to begin with, that is what Medicare and Medicaid are, don't kid yourselves, and that's what the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, is, don't kid yourselves. Whether or not you support it, that's as may be, but it is subsidized healthcare in some form. Since the government is now in the business of doing that, the government also should be in the business of keeping its citizenry healthy. That's the trade-off you make. If you want government-run or government-sponsored or government-subsidized healthcare, you ought to have a government that produces a government stake in the health of its own citizens. What this means is, hopefully, and this is what I'm praying for, this would be ideal. I would love to see a massive tax on sugar. That would be the simplest way to do it. Now, would this solve every problem? Of course not. KFC can sit there and crank out the Double Down or whatever vile creation they come out with next that is deep fried and terrible for you. But one problem at a time, and sugar is the easiest one. If a leader, and here's how I know, okay? So I moved from rural South Carolina to Hawaii, where the costs of a liter of Coca-Cola are basically double. People survive and live just fine out here. And funny enough, obviously, correlation does not imply causation, but people are a lot less obese out here than they are in South Carolina. Obesity rates are still far too high out here in Hawaii as well, but they are substantially lower than the Deep South. Obesity rates are in that 40+% range in states like South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and consequently, costs of healthcare, especially in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, are much higher, and life expectancy is a lot lower in those states. There's a reason the lowest life expectancy states are all kind of clustered in the southeast there. It's because it's the Deep South. It's because people eat way more junk food and are lazy. I love the Deep South, don't get me wrong. I am a huge fan of Southern cooking too. The difference is I stay active enough to where every so often when I want to go and indulge in something like Carolina-style barbecue or collard green shrimp and grits and mac and cheese or chicken fried steak, right? If I do that, I am aware that that is an extremely heavy meal. I make that an occasion, and I don't make it my day-to-day consumption, because you do that, I mean, you are just, you are, you're in for it. It's if you're doing that every day, you either need to be perpetually in motion, or you're going to get very fat. There's just no other way about it. That's just the reality of the situation. So with that in mind, I think with regards to changes in the healthcare system, before you can go down the route of a further move to government-run healthcare, which is realistically the only way this lazy country is going to see a change in healthcare. I do not think, even under a right-wing administration like Trump purports to be, he's more populist than right-wing. I don't think Trump himself is particularly right-wing. I think his party is right-wing, but I don't think he is particularly right-wing. I think he's a populist. Because of that, I think he's going to be more open to a more government-run approach. But you're not going to fix any of these problems until you get to the core of why American healthcare is more expensive. And it's because Americans are fatter and sicker than most other developed countries. And the biggest part of that is because we are lazier and because we eat worse. And when I say lazier, I do mean lazier. I have proof of this. The amount of people who, in the most expensive state to own a car and the most perfect weather you could possibly imagine, cycling rates here are dismal. Could cycling infrastructure be improved? Yes. Can you still get around with a bicycle just fine here? You can. And there are people who do it, but the percentage is just, it's shockingly low. And I think a large part of why cycling isn't as embraced in the US as it is in other countries is it's because we subsidize automobiles. This is, well, we subsidize an obesogenic environment. Then we're shocked when people get obese. But it's also the character of the average American over the last 50 years has greatly declined, has become a lot lazier. Now, there have been some places where we've done a lot better. We smoke a lot less than almost every European country. The reason for that is in the 60s, we had a serious public health campaign to educate people about the dangers of tobacco use. That is a rare government policy win that should not be understated. However, one of the biggest reasons is because we started hitting tobacco with some big fucking taxes. So what do you think we might want to do to things like sugar or high fructose corn syrup? Another one you could do is slash agricultural subsidies to corn farmers. Yeah, I know you would lose Iowa votes, you would lose Nebraska votes, you'd lose Missouri votes, but let's be real. Are the Democrats going to win there anytime soon? You just know they're not. All those corn syrup subsidies drastically, artificially decrease the price of corn syrup, which means it's going to go into everything as an ingredient because it's much cheaper than actual sugar. And it's not that corn syrup is better or worse than sugar. They're ultimately just forms of sucrose or fructose, which is your body processes them largely the same way. But why spend government money to make that cheap, right? Why make artificially processed crap cheap? And you're going to say, oh, but food costs are so high these days. Okay, as a percentage of the American... Actually, I'm going to write this down. This is important. As a percentage of the American household's budget, okay? And you can go back and look at the statistics of this. If you want me to find you sources, I can, but as a percentage of the household budget, food has been falling decade after decade after decade. In 2020 through 2024, even with the most recent inflation, which of course was caused by excessive government spending, but that's neither here nor there, the price of food as the portion of money we spend on food in this country as a percentage of our incomes keeps going down and down and down. A large part of that is because we have cheaper alternatives. But what that would suggest is that if the prices of food, of all that processed crap, which is really not food when you think about it, it's a food-like substance that ultimately just makes you sicker and fatter and poorer. It's not worth the savings in the short term to make yourself, again, poorer and fatter and sicker in the long run. And you say, well, what about food deserts? Well, I used to live in one. I used to live in a small town of 1,500 in South Carolina where the only grocery store, it was a convenience store. It was a Dollar General because it's the Deep South and Dollar Generals exist in every fucking small town in the Deep South. Even there, I could find things like canned vegetables. I could find things like rice, beans. If I had to, I could live on what's in a Dollar General and survive. Maybe it wouldn't be the fanciest or the best meals, but I could do it and survive and still have a healthy diet for the most part. Frozen vegetables, most Dollar Generals have them. It's just people go in, and I watched every time I go into the Dollar General, I'd see people pick candy and Little Debbie's and alcohol and all sorts of other crap they didn't really need. And that's the one that really bothers me. You talk about food prices and say Americans can't afford this. Then you see fucking Budweiser and Jack Daniels in their shopping cart. Yes, they can. They're just not willing to tighten their belts. And I mean literally in this case. I know that may sound harsh, but right, there is a level of actual poverty where you get skinny again. I don't think Americans have seen that kind of poverty for many decades. I'd say probably the last time most Americans really saw that kind of poverty was the 1930s. We haven't seen it since. I'm not saying we need to go back to that level of desperation, but if you're really looking to save money, just don't buy the junk food, save your money, and then when you have a little bit more money, buy a little bit more high quality food. And I'm not suggesting that you can't get by on cheap food. Hell, there were years where I lived on lentils, beans, and rice. I did it, or peanut butter and tortillas. I did it when I was in college because that's all I could afford. There was a time when my grocery bill was $75 a month. Okay? And if you're really at that low of an income, let's not kid ourselves. Food stamps are available for you. That has been a thing in this country for decades. you can still get access to it, especially if you are a woman or below the age of 18. So, right, there is a point where, again, a lot of these problems are self-inflicted. That being said, I would like to hope that some change in a positive direction comes from this. I just don't see it happening. I think if it's going to happen, it's going to be more a function of having a new administration that, because there's a relatively populist president coming in, Trump appears more popular now in 2024 than he was in 2016 or in 2020. You may see a little bit more movement there. I'm interested in what I think Kevin O'Leary, one of the high-end Wall Street guys, the investment guys on Wall Street, was saying was, it is time to ditch the ties from employment to healthcare. Now, that used to be a very popular position about 10 years ago on the left. And the idea of a public option under the debates for the Affordable Care Act in 2009, 2010, God, that was 15 years ago, not 10. Time flies, doesn't it? But a lot of that is, let's see, do we still, okay, we still got concurrent viewers, it's just people are quiet today. Anyway, back then, the idea of severing employment from healthcare was seen as a more popular idea on the left. But when Wall Street guys are starting to say it, that may mean the Overton window has shifted a bit here. And I think it's a good idea. The reason being, not because it's more equitable or it's better for the working class or any of that other socialist claptrap, but because if you were a small business owner, which is the backbone of the American economy, if you work in small business, trying to provide healthcare for your employees, it is extremely difficult and it limits your ability to grow. So if you can, right, why do we even have employer-sponsored healthcare in this country? The answer goes back to World War II. So in World War II, because war is extremely inflationary and the United States was making massive deficits to fund the war effort, as we should have, it was, again, a time of crisis, but war causes inflation, always. Always, 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 because it demands more production, and that production goes off to a battlefield and gets immediately destroyed. So because of the inflation that the US government wanted to stave off in the early 1940s, they put price controls. God, you imagine this in today's world, people would call this communist. But obviously, trying to fight the Nazis, we had priorities here. The US government instituted price controls on how much wages could go up year after year. So to keep their employees motivated and to prevent people from quitting, right? Because another thing war does is creates a labor shortage because all of your workers are going out to fight. This is why in the 1940s, female employment became a major thing. It's part of what spurred on the I don't know which wave it is, the wave of the feminist movement in the 60s. It started in the early 1940s. Because women were, due to the war effort, they had to enter the workforce in a way they never had before. So, and a lot of those gals in the 40s and 50s decided, hey, I don't mind this. I'd like to make my own money and be self-supportive. But because of that, what companies in the United States in the early 40s had to do was come up with other incentives to try and placate employees that would otherwise leave for another job and create an even worse labor shortage. So to do that, they came up with health insurance, which said, hey, we will cover, back in the 40s, it was, we will cover all of your healthcare expenses on the company dime. You don't, apart from, I think, the U.S. military, or, well, if you're working Congress, if you're a congressman, you could still get this. Speaking of corruption. But in those days, it was, there isn't that kind of power for health care anymore. You don't get your health care fully covered by any employer, pretty much. Nowadays, it's a very Byzantine mess of different options, and HMOs and PPOs and HDHPs and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the point is that, right, the concept of employer-sponsored health insurance is a relic of the early 1940s, where we had a labor shortage that demanded it. Unless, God forbid, we go to war with China in a few years, or we go to war with Russia in a few years. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen, obviously. There's no need for employers to use that as an incentive. Employers can just raise wages today, and that works just fine. And if you want, I would say, again, this is where I agree with a lot of the Wall Street guys. Just sever the connection. Don't make it something business does. Allow business to offer higher wages instead. Say, hey, go to the public market for healthcare. Have it be like that. I think ideally, if you want to have a more capitalist healthcare model, you can subsidize the bottom of the market with a lower income. But we've already got that with the ACA and with Medicaid. I think it's Medicaid. There is a gap, and I think that ought to be eliminated. There's Medicaid, there's a gap, and then there's the ACA. But beyond a certain income point, and if you're making that kind of income, you're probably working for a fairly decent-sized company or you're your own businessman, where I think you'd be better off having a free market where, and this is the one I would require healthcare providers to do, is list your prices up front. You should be able to purchase healthcare at least with the knowledge of what the costs would be. You should be able to select a hospital based on prices for different things. If you are, let's say, someone who goes out and does skateboarding, you're more at risk for breaking a bone. So you should be able to find the hospital that provides the cheapest and best healthcare for that, because you're probably going to need it a bit more. That's the thing with healthcare. It's an inelastic supply and demand. So may Luigi face death penalty? Edition 300, that's a good question. I don't think he will, because I believe the trial is in the state of New York, and I don't think New York does the death penalty. If he were in the Deep South, it would be a very different question. I know he wanted to get extradited to Pennsylvania. I don't know what Pennsylvania's death penalty laws are, but I'm pretty sure New York doesn't have one. And I think because the shooting occurred in New York City, that is the state in which he is going to get tried. So I think with the death penalty in the United States is usually a state-by-state type thing. As far as the death penalty is concerned, I don't really give a shit about that one. I think in theory I'm more opposed to it because it's wasteful. But if you're gonna have a death penalty, do it properly and use a fucking firing squad. Look, the cost of lethal injections is already stupidly high, and there's so much legal bullshit around it, right? A couple rifle shots to the back of the head, much cheaper, much more effective, and it gives, you can have the executioners, you can have them be prison guards. It gives them some practice. It's much less painful too. Like, it's honestly, it's just as humane as a lethal injection. As provided you get shot in the head first. You get shot in the body first, okay, that's a bit cruel and unusual. But okay, tell the executioners to aim for the fucking head. And if you've got enough of them, aiming at the guy shouldn't be a problem. Just pow. I mean, if you really want to do it, we could go get some old surplus material, do it North Korea style, and just, launch an anti-aircraft missile at someone with a death penalty. Turn them into a fine red mist. It will be instant. It'll be a bit gory, but it'll be instant. That's I don't actually mean that. That is a bit tongue-in-cheek there. Let's not actually use anti-aircraft missiles for death penalties. It's just a little joke. It is pretty funny that that's how the North Koreans do it, though. They use anti-aircraft missiles. It's a little bit of overkill. No, I think, but if you're gonna have a death penalty, do it at a way that does not cost the taxpayer hundreds of thousands of dollars per use. Fuck that. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's all I had for you. Do I think? I guess I'll summarize. Was the shooting justified or condoned? It was no. I don't condone the shooting. Uh, just because the CEO may have been a scumbag. We don't know. That's all unknown at this point, to the extent of my knowledge. And because Mangione got screwed over by the healthcare industry, does not justify his actions. It explains them, but it does not justify them. And then, do I think the shooting will be the catalyst for change? No. If I had to say there was a catalyst for change for the U.S. healthcare system at large, I would say the Trump administration's inauguration is a more likely catalyst for change. Even that, I still think it's not going to happen. But if there was going to be a reason it happened, I would say a new presidential administration, and I believe the Republicans have control both the Senate and the House at this point. So I think this is the closest we've had to a supermajority since 2009, which is the last time healthcare really got an update. Dale Wayne says that. All right. Edition 300 says then. Yeah, no, I don't think this is going to be a catalyst for a lot of change. Do you think the USA would have a universal healthcare one day? I mean, it could happen, but this is another issue. Americans, there's a great video by the YouTuber named Kraut about this, where Americans have this idealized image of what European healthcare is like, and a lot of Americans think European healthcare is a monolith. The healthcare systems in places like the United Kingdom are very different from the healthcare systems in places like Germany, very different from the healthcare systems in places like Canada, very different from the healthcare systems in places like Japan. They are all different because they're different countries. There are a lot of different ways to provide healthcare, and what you define as universal becomes the question at that point. If by universal you mean a government subsidized single payer system, really socialized medicine in the way the United Kingdom has it, no. The U.S. pharmaceutical and R&D industries are too big for that. And to their credit, it's part of the reason a lot of the new innovative drugs and pharmaceuticals that get produced are originally created in the United States. There is a reason for that. But do I think could I see a place where we get to, maybe closer to a Germany model as opposed to a UK model, where there's a single payer option, there's single payer, there's a public option, and employment is taken out of it? Yeah, I think it's going to take several more decades. The truth is, though, America needs to take a good hard look at the individual health of its citizenry first before ever making that step, because, and this is coming from my perspective, would I vote for universal health care? No, not unless it is attached to massive taxes on junk food and alcohol. Alcohol is taxed a lot lower here than it is in almost any country that has universal health care. That needs to change. And the same with junk food. I think the Danes have a tax on fats. The UK has a tax on sugar. The French have a tax on sugar. You go anywhere in the world like that, and the reason that's done is because healthcare expenses are simply too high. There are too many sick, fat, and otherwise people in subpar health shape here that you can just convert to universal healthcare and just wave a magic wand to pay for it. Every United States citizen would access for free. Okay, good. I'm glad you put free in quotes there, because again, Europeans don't get free healthcare. They get healthcare that they pay for with taxes. I could see it. I don't think it's going to happen because Luigi Mangione shot a healthcare CEO. I'll put it that way. If you wanted me to give odds on whether or not it would happen in the next 10 years, I'd say less than 10% odds. I would say if it happens, it's going to take several more decades for it to happen. There's a lot of vested interests in favor of keeping the status quo, which means any change is going to be very slow and incremental. Think about the fights that occurred just to get the Affordable Care Act, which is watered down heavily in 2009 passed, right? So in 2008, we had the biggest recession or economic slowdown this country has seen since the Great Depression, an unbelievably popular incumbent president coming in, and an unbelievably unpopular president leaving. George W. Bush he had some of the worst approval ratings of any president in 2008 when he left, and Obama had some of the highest in 2009 when he came in. And despite that, and despite a supermajority in Congress, ultimately what became Obamacare, the ACA, was still pretty watered down and still very incremental in its nature. So if it happens, it's going to be over the course of decades, not months or weeks. And if you're thinking of universal or taxpayer subsidized healthcare, the government might do, I certainly wouldn't expect the Trump administration to do it. Now, I could be wrong. I could see him do it. It wouldn't surprise me if the GOP tries to do that just because they know how popular it would be, but I don't think it's going to happen. What do you expect from Trump? So I did a video about this maybe a week or two ago. If you want, you can go take a look at that. Just go to my live stream section. You can find that yourself. But what do I expect from Trump? I think a lot of what was done in his first term is going to occur in his second term. I think the biggest one is that the tax cuts he passed in 2017 are going to try and be made permanent, or at least the bare minimum extended another 10 years, which I don't think is a good idea. I think they're largely fiscally irresponsible. I think I would love to see DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency Task Force led by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, actually do something. I don't think it's going to happen. There is a lot of waste in the US government that we could get rid of. But the truth is, you could get rid of all that waste tomorrow and you'd still be running a massive deficit until we address the two big elephants in the room. And that's Social Security and Medicare, and to a lesser extent, the military. We could definitely do some cutbacks on our military, but with China getting more aggressive and with Russia actively invading Ukraine, there is a limit to how far we want to cut there. That being said, the big ones are Social Security and Medicare. The simple math here is that we have a system where in the 30s and 40s, the life expectancy was 59 and the eligibility age was 62. Now the eligibility age is 66, 67, depending on what age you are, and life expectancy is 79. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what the problem is there, right? Let me break it down to you this way. Okay? Okay, so 1935, eligibility age was 62, life expectancy was 59. 2024, eligibility age is 66, 67, life expectancy is 79. And we'll just say 66 for this, keep it simple. Let me grab the eraser there. There we go. Right. Okay. It's not rocket scientists doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what the problem is here. That right there, that's not sustainable, okay? No amount of DOGE government efficiency welfare cutting is going to fix this. You have to raise the Social Security and Medicare age. And I'm not talking about biting around the edges, raising it to 67, 68, 69. 73 should be an absolute minimum as a compromise. I think 80 would be an excellent age for it. Is that going to hurt? Yes. And should it be done immediately? Absolutely. Are the boomers going to fucking squeal? You bet your ass they are. But you know what? They're already the most spoiled, entitled generation this country has ever seen. A lot of the problems that we as a society deal with are because the boomers made selfish, entitled decisions and didn't save properly through some of the most prosperous times humanity has ever seen. The boomer generation went through the 1980s stock boom, the 1990s stock boom, the 2000s stock boom, the 2010 stock boom, and the current stock boom. If you went through your life for the last 50 to 60 years not figuring out, maybe I ought to do some serious investing, at some point we have to hold you responsible and you just need to work. If you wasted all of your money, no, you know what? The government shouldn't sponsor your retirement. So that's the one, and this is the problem. Trump has said he's not going to do this. Trump has said he's not going to touch Social Security or Medicare. So it's not going to get fixed. We're going to continue to run deficits. And what that's going to mean is when eventually reality comes, that brick wall is going to come. We're going to see inflation in this country that at the best is going to be replicable, is going to be looking like the 1970s. And the 1970s were much worse in terms of inflation than what we saw the last few years under Biden. What's the biggest of them all? I mean, this is a math problem. There's nothing else to be said about it. This is not sustainable. It's very simple, right? If we had stuck to 1935 levels, right, the eligibility age for Social Security would be 82. Do I think we need to go that far with it? No. We are more prosperous and wealthy as a society than we were in 1935. But bare minimum should be mid-70s. And it should be done now. Again, don't just screw over the millennials and the Zoomers with this. This needs to be raised fucking now. But it's not going to happen. No major politician. And again, Social Security is the third rail of American politics. If you touch it, you're going to get electrocuted. And your campaign will be, therefore, dead. But you're not fixing the problem without addressing this. The only way you can otherwise address this is to drastically increase taxes. And do you really think Trump is going to do that? Come on. Even the Democrats couldn't do that. Even if they had the political will, the Democrats wouldn't do that. Meanwhile, you have idiots like Bernie Sanders out there saying he wants to expand Social Security and Medicare. And to him, I'm going to quote the current leader of Argentina, Javier Milei, "No hay plata." There is no money. We do not have the money to do that. You could cut the military. Okay, 100% of the military budget could go poof, gone tomorrow. You would still be running a federal deficit. We don't have the money to do that. The government, again, Elon Musk and Vivek, I wish them luck. I think there's a lot of waste and fraud they could find. I think there's a lot of regulatory burden they could find, but it is not going to solve the deficit. Elon and Vivek are going to fail in their job for reasons they can't control, because Trump made a promise. The only way the federal deficit gets fixed is if Trump breaks his promise on not touching Social Security and Medicare, which he should do. He should absolutely break his own promise, because that would be fiscally responsible. But neither the Democrats nor the Republicans are interested in fiscal responsibility. The last fiscally responsible president we had was the best president of my lifetime, Bill Clinton. I was born in 1995. Explain to me how we've had a better president since Clinton. We had no major foreign wars, and we had a balanced budget in the late 1990s. There you go. That's the best president of my lifetime. That's all it takes. According to CNBC, the economy has historically done better under Democratic leadership. We're talking about deficits here. The economy is not as important, but let's see here. Do I have anything else related to this consultation? No, that's about it. I think I'm going out to the beach today, So we'll see. Excuse me. Why we got Social Security? Oh my God, did you not just listen to what? Okay, I'm not gonna explain it a second time. I just finished explaining it. It's no hay plata, or I think maybe it's I know plata. I need to review my Spanish grammar clearly. Mi gramática no es bueno. Just the camera. Oh, I was just about to head off. So I was gonna give the hug, but I was just looking at my phone, seeing when my homies are going to the beach, because we're gonna do that today. Anyway, that is gonna be it for today's consultation. I've got a few other consultations coming up, and then at 6 p.m. tonight, for those of you who were unaware somehow and missed last night's broadcast and yesterday morning's broadcast and all the polls that I've put out, we are doing a Ask Me Anything stream on the Discord. So type in !Discord. Neem, just rewind the video the last 10 minutes. So drop me a line in there at 6 p.m. Hawaiian Standard Time tonight. So it's going to be 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're in Europe, I'm sorry. That's just the way the votes went. And I don't know what time. Somewhere in the afternoon if you're in Asia or Australia. But that is going to be, we're going to do a little Ask Me Anything channel event where you guys can ask me whatever the hell you want. It's going to be very informal. It's going to be on my Discord. You can ask a lot of spicier questions there. We don't have to worry about demonetization because it's private, and I can answer them with candor. If we see your homies at the beach, with your homies attractive looking to mingle, maybe. We'll see. Keep an eye on my Instagram if you want more of that. If you want to see who I'm hanging out with, because you'll probably see a lot more on that. Anyway, that is going to be it for me today until later. I'll see y'all at 6 tonight. Until then, y'all, make good decisions. Those good decisions form your habits. Those habits form your actions. Those actions form... I messed that up. Sorry. Good decisions form your actions. Actions form your habits. The habits form your values. The values form an ethos. Be the guide to sort through the rough waters of life. I need more sleep. I can tell I am a bit fatigued today. When I hit squats today in the gym, I could tell I was a little bit weaker. I failed on a couple sets at 8 reps when I was gunning for 10 to 12. I have cousins in Europe who will try to watch. Okay. Neem, I will say again, if you want my answer as to why we need to dramatically increase the Social Security age, just rewind the video about 10-15 minutes. I know plata. That's the biggest reason. Anywho, that's going to be it for me. Come in for the hug. Shoots. See y'all tonight. Otherwise, as far as YouTube is concerned, I've got a couple more consultations. We're coming up on Christmas break, so expect to see me around. I'll probably make some more announcements on when. Trying to figure out, I'm still waiting on poll results for when I ought to stream. Christmas is always kind of weird, but I'll probably make some content over the break. So that'll be useful. And then, I'm going to try cycling around the entire island of Oahu on the 26th, so that should be fun. Y'all see that. Shoots. See y'all around.